and welcome back to Me Dark Presents Scary Movie Madness.
It's been a long time. A long time.
I don't even remember, what was it, 2 years ago, the last time we did one of these?
If it's 2 years, I can't even.
I think so. I think it was 2 years ago when the Halloween remakes, well, not the remakes, the new sequels to the series came out. We did those.
Oh, that's right. When we were supposed to forget about all the other Halloweens that were out there.
That was the last thing we did.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why we took a break in the first place is because I started getting into filmmaking of my own. In fact, I think after that last episode that we did, that following week was the week that I shot my first short film. Yep. And I was a nervous wreck the entire time. And I was like, you know what? I can't focus on the podcast. I have to focus on making this short movie, which did great. We got into 5 film festivals.
Got some laurels.
We got some laurels. Getting ready to release it. I just finished the edit for the trailer. Yep. And then we got an offer to be part of this new streaming service that is coming out that's a little bit more industry facing. It's called Rise Flicks. It's not out yet, but essentially what they're doing is they're like showcasing independent filmmakers, student filmmakers, people that are obviously looking to break into the industry as filmmakers, but instead of gearing their streaming service more towards like a general audience like you or I, they're focused on industry professionals. So people that are looking for up and coming filmmaking talent, people to hire for projects, which is kind of cool. I'm excited about that. Yeah. And then I shot another short earlier this year that I'm finishing up. The first one was straight up horror. It's called The Pig. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I want to sort of release a lot of it on the channel. I don't know that a lot of people understand like what goes into indie filmmaking on this level. Like people have watched, I'm sure you have too, like behind the scenes, like making of a movie, right?
Yeah, of course.
But oftentimes like you're seeing like a big budget production with a lot of people, a lot of cast, a lot of crew. It's so stripped down from that when you're doing this stuff yourself. Fortunately, I got to work with a lot of great people on this, professional people, because I am a professional. I work in the industry as a visual effects artist. So I know a lot of people, but still, it's a small team and it's a lot of work and it's craziness. We shot the whole thing in 4 days. We ended up with over 100 visual effects shots in the whole piece, and it's 18 minutes long. So that just goes to show you the level of work that goes into this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even when we went to the one film festival in New York City and they had all these people up there and you got to be on the panel and you're looking at the end credits of all these other shorts. And some of them...
long list of people.
Had... 50 plus people making them for their 18, 20 minute or less kind of short. Mm-hmm. And it was just crazy because some of them didn't even have half the work in terms of that editing and, the visual effects and all of that too. Some of them were a lot more straightforward and it seemed like, wow, you had that many people and like, look what you guys did with a handful of people. Yeah. Like the same people doing lighting that are doing the shots, that are doing the, the set design, that are doing the continuity. Like there's people that do those jobs. And you guys are just doing all of them in addition to just writing and directing and doing even the music, right? Like all of that stuff was just this.
I did use a lot of stock music for the first one. And a lot of that just came down to, it's not that I'm not capable of making the music. It just came down to how many more jobs can I put on? Like I'm doing the editing, the color, the visual effects, the writing. Not that I did it all by myself, but like for the most part, I was the main person doing all the stuff. Yeah. So at some point you have to just sort of, all right, just can I cheat a little and take some stock music?
100%.
It was a tremendous amount of fun. But now, now that I've got the 2 shorts under my belt and we've sort of circled back and said like, oh, let's bring the pod back because not only is it's fun to do these, obviously, but it's great just promotion for me to get myself out there as a filmmaker. And I told you this today. I do want to have, and I'm going to have a special podcast with a couple of guests, hoping, I'm trying to make that work with people that worked on The Pig with me. And we'll have them here and we'll talk about the movie and it'll be a lot of fun. We'll give you all the bits and details about how we made it and why we chose to do the thing
behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. If you are joining us for the first time, Please like and subscribe. This is your part where you promote us.
This is my part? Yeah. Oh, my goodness. It's been so long, I don't even remember what I'm supposed to say. But we are everywhere you can find a podcast. We are also on YouTube if you want the amazing visuals, let's say, right? A little taste of Mark's talents in terms of how we edit and showcase these pods.
Yeah, they're way more video driven. But obviously you can listen to the audio, but we try to put in, if you're just finding us for the first time, like I'm going to put in a whole bunch of scenes from the movies that we talk about. Yeah. And it's a nice little
I'm not a podcast person. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. So I like the visual personally, and that's what I think works. Anyway, back to the shameless self-promotion. Like and subscribe on YouTube. We've got little clips on Instagram. Follow us over there. And we've also stood up our Patreon now, which is super exciting.
Is it Patreon or Patreon?
I don't know. Tomato.
Patreon.
I'm from Long Island, I guess.
Is that also Me Dark Presents? How do people find that?
All of our accounts will be under Me Dark Presents. That's MEEDARK Presents. Mm-hmm. That is our name.
Even though the name of the podcast is Scary Movie Madness.
Yeah. I still don't understand how you've switched this up, but it is what it is, and we are Me Dark Presents.
I didn't switch it up. Essentially, the way that we had done this was, let's make it Me Dark Presents, which would be sort of the banner of anything and everything we want to do, and then we can have subsets of different shows or things that we want to make. In this case, Scary Movie Madness. Yeah. So in this podcast, we do mostly talk about scary movies, which is our favorite thing.
The bread and butter, if you will. The bread and butter.
So in this episode, we're going to be talking about the films of one of my favorite horror directors, Ari Aster, who basically made waves in 2018 when he came out with, I guess it's his feature directorial debut, because much like me, he started out making a lot of shorts.
Yeah.
So if you go and look at his credentials on IMDb, it's a lot of shorts leading up to eventually Hereditary. And that's sort of how it's done in the industry. If anybody out there is looking to become a filmmaker, really the way to do it is to make a film. I mean, that's kind of it. Like, you don't really need to know anybody. There's no secret to it. You just sort of have to do it. And then, go try to get your films into festivals and get it seen. Like, it was really cool seeing my movie on a big screen in the city in a theater play. Like, it was awesome.
It was a great experience.
Even if that's all you get to do, it's fun. But yeah, that's how Ari Aster started. So he writes and directs this film Hereditary in 2018. This was a huge hit when it first came out. And yeah, there's a grunt from you. I mean, we watched it when it first came out, and I believe it fell flat, believe it or not, for both of us, you especially.
So I've decided I don't like this movie.
You don't like this movie. So we have watched it again recently.
It's not that So like you said, we watched this actually 3 times. This is the 3rd time.
It's the 3rd time for me. I thought you didn't watch it the second time.
No, I did. I fell asleep at different parts the first and the second time.
Maybe you're just tired.
But the 3rd time I was like, I'm making a concerted effort to watch this.
Well, because we had to talk about it for the podcast.
Well, of course. But also because I'm like, all right, I just have to like not be distracted. Don't get too comfy, because I felt it was a little slow moving in the beginning, right? That's the thing that like gets you out of it the most. Mm-hmm. I'm watching a horror movie. I want it to like grab me early on. That's big. But the thing for me is that even after watching it this time, and I did enjoy watching it, I will say that. Mm-hmm. But I know that I don't really like it because I find it hard to remember the parts about it I liked.
So in the past, when we've talked about these films, we would sort of do a more in-depth breakdown of each one. We're kind of stripping it back this time, and we're really just going to focus on the things that we liked about the films, the things that we didn't like about the films, and we're even going to give it a little bit of a scorecard.
I love the scorecard.
Okay, so, and again, we don't give awards for art. This is totally subjective.
Except your short films, apparently.
Well, yeah. Well, I didn't get any awards for my film, but whatever. So we'll talk about that when we get to the scorecard part. But first, I do like to talk about just the cast up front.
Oh, yeah.
This one stars Toni Collette as Annie. might know her from The Sixth Sense, The Hours. I remember her from Little Miss Sunshine the most.
Yep.
So she is one of my likes in this movie, is I really enjoy her acting and her character. I think she's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's always been really great. I think it's one of those actresses where it's like, it's underrated because she's not in everything. But then the things that she's in are good.
Yeah, and she's sort of a character actor.
Yeah, and she's not like oversaturated where you also can't disconnect one movie from another because she's typecast as the same person, you know? And I love that. I always feel, especially in horror movies, that I need that kind of casting. I need that kind of like, they're kind of known unknown, so I don't get lost in like the last thing I've seen them do.
Yeah, and you really only probably get that with this film. Like we talked about it, the little girl who plays Charlie, Millie Shapiro, she's in nothing else, which is unfortunate because I think she's a great little creepy character in this.
Oh my God.
With the little clicks and the clucking thing that she does.
The click thing?
That gets you.
That's the thing I remember. Well, that's one of two things I remember the most, like is the clicking.
Oh, it's very memorable, sure.
Yeah. It's like The Conjuring with the clap. Right? Like it's like that thing that is going to make you shiver when it happens.
It's really smart to do, especially in a horror movie, to do. We talked about this with Hell House LLC, right? With the little piano part.
Yep.
That they play over and over again. And it's so memorable. I think when you have that like auditory thing in a horror film, especially that is memorable like that, it really does go, and it's so simple, but it goes a very long way.
Yeah, and it's especially with kids, like that's like a little quirky thing that like your sibling does that annoys the shit out of you, and then it ties in so well here, where like, you know, once she's gone.
So Alex Wolff plays her brother Peter, and he's in Oppenheimer, which I haven't seen yet. He's in that other M. Night Shyamalan movie, Old, which you really liked.
Oh, I did like that,
We can talk about that one at some point. But I thought he was another one of my likes in this film. Again, just a really a nice casting. Like, he's just an interesting looking guy. He definitely physically plays this vulnerability very, like, it just fits like his body type, the tone of it. It just works really well. And he has those moments where he's just like a complete mess and he just sells it so well. Like, you really feel like you're in his shoes, because this movie is really like a torment on him in a way.
Yeah.
The atmosphere of the film, the cinematography, Ari Aster has this brilliant way in which he really does these really nicely framed, slow moving shots. The tones are always, in this film, very consistent. Yeah. The setup to this movie is really what I like the most. And the whole setup and leading into Charlie's death scene, which is just brutal. And you didn't remember that it was
No, because I had fallen asleep the last two times before that part even happened.
That's very early on in the film.
I know.
Wow. How did I not know? Ari Aster has like a thing with the head, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, we'll talk about it in Midsommar too. Yeah, just like decapitate the head, I guess. I don't
just destroy it.
Just destroy it.
It even happens in Beau is Afraid, technically.
I don't understand why this movie seems to be preferred more than Midsommar. I really don't see this one to be, it doesn't seem particularly original to me. I think that's where I struggle with it, is like, what was so special about this other than Ari Aster's style of filmmaking, which I really like? You still get, or we still get bogged down with like the same kind of stuff I've seen before, with the supernatural element being some sort of a spirit,
a ghost
that's going to take over somebody's body, or it's going to move an object in the room that is not supposed to be moved, and people are going to freak out. It's just, I don't see why people freaked out, other than all the metaphor and symbolism and the style of Ari Aster. Maybe that's what it was. It was the first time seeing him make a movie, and everybody's like, okay, this seems special, because he is a special filmmaker.
Yeah, it's the style. It's what we talk about a lot, that you have to make something you believe is good, right? You have to make it for you. I think probably why people like this is people are fascinated with afterlife, because that's what this is. It's not being able to let go. And
yeah, the loss of a loved one, particularly a child, right? And
in such a traumatic way with like
she gets coerced into thinking she could bring her daughter back by this character Joan, played by Ann Dowd. She plays that seance-y lady that meets Annie at the grief counseling, right? But she's really just, she's been stalking Annie this whole time because of this whole ritual thing that's going on behind the scenes with Annie's mom and this cult that she belonged to. I don't like the dad. I hate the dad. The casting of it, I think he's in the Usual Suspects. He's like an older actor who's been around a long time. Yeah. For whatever reason, he bothers me in this film. It's probably not his fault. I happen to think that he's just not an interesting character because he's not fleshed out. There's nothing really to him. He doesn't really serve much purpose in the film. In fact, I would argue you could probably make this movie without him. It has no bearing on the story almost.
Yeah, it's true. It's almost just like, well, we just need a dad there because it's a story about a family.
Once it spills over into the supernatural stuff and we get like the mom floating around at the end, and it sort of, it crosses over into a little bit of this like goofy territory for me, where I'm just like, I've seen this. How many times have I seen this where like somebody's crawling on the ceiling or something, and it's like, I'm no longer scared by it. Ultimately, like, I'm always going to have this problem when it comes to ghost movies, right? It's just not, I've just seen too many of these and they don't feel scary to me anymore because even in Hereditary, they don't do anything particularly interesting with it until I guess maybe the wrap up with the cult at the end. Yeah. It is my least favorite of his movies. Yeah. I would say.
I mean,
and
again,
you just don't like it at all. I think it's a good movie.
It's not that I don't like it at all. It's that, like, I know it doesn't mean anything to me. Mm-hmm. You know, like, it doesn't mean anything to me because I have to dig to remember the parts of it I liked. Whereas, like, there's other movie, like, we're going to talk about Midsommar, and probably one of my favorite movies, honestly.
One of your favorite horror movies?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, especially after watching it the second time, for sure.
All right. Well, let's move on to the scorecard portion of this. We give a score of 1 to 4 in each one of these categories as like a way of, I don't know, I guess it's just like a fun little rundown of like overall how we feel about this movie. Yes. In terms of acting. Yep. I scored this one a 3 out of 4. And mostly that is because of Toni Collette and Alex Wolff. I felt like the rest of the cast around them it's average at best.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you.
You got a 3?
Yeah, I think, well, her and then obviously Charlie. Like, I think like those are...
She's just not in the movie very long.
She's not, but for what she needs to do, she does it. Mm-hmm. You know, like you get this eeriness of, you know, the whole thing, whole personality and the clicking thing. And like, she just nails like that awkward young kid that she's supposed to be. Yeah. You know, she's supposed to be the outcast kid. She's the outcast who's kind of like forgotten about and no one, you know, not really being paid attention to and just kind of like there. And she nails it in the personality of it and how she moves, how she speaks, how she reacts.
It's interesting. Like, it just makes me think of the scene where they go to the party, right? And she eats the cake with the nuts or whatever. And I can't really confirm or deny, or maybe it is and I just missed it. Is this like, it's specifically set up this way, right? To kill her. Because at the end, I think Joan even says like, when she's talking to Payman at the end, right? When Payman goes into Peter's body, rather. Mm-hmm. I think Joan says like, we got rid of your female body, which was useless, right? The demon can't exist inside Charlie's body. It can't use a female body for some reason. So they have to
supposed to be a boy.
Yeah. She was supposed to be a boy. So they have to rid that body so they can go into Peter's body instead. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing that does imply that somebody planted, like one of the cult members, like planted and orchestrated this, where she was going to be eating this cake at the party. Like they were making concerted effort to kill her.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, like, how? I don't know.
But I guess really
it's supernatural, so does it matter?
I mean, there's no way they could have orchestrated like, all right, here's what's going to happen. Yeah. You're going to go and you're to this party and eat this cake. And then you're going to be struggling to breathe, and your brother's going to be driving on the road, and then something's going to come out in front of the road and startle him.
Yeah, he's high as hell because they are smoking weed. Leaves her alone. It's like, here's some cake.
I don't know how it's it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make sense.
But they imply
or it's a
that
happy
it's
coincidence that makes the, like they don't really explain it.
Well, they imply that they orchestrated it, but it doesn't really make sense when you look at the whole sequence of events that this was plotted. Somehow it seems like a total
If it was
accident.
like, oh, she just ate this cake and died, then maybe.
I guess maybe that's what they assumed would happen, and then something worse.
Yeah, I guess something way worse.
Which brings me to the effects portion of the scorecard, right? Because it's not really an effect-heavy movie, but we do get a really gnarly-looking effect when they show the aftermath of Charlie's head in the road.
Yeah.
That looks great.
It does look amazing, but again, like I feel like I'm not going to rate it high.
Well, for that, I gave the effects a 2. It's not an effect-heavy movie, right?
Fine.
So obvious, but because of that head and how cool it looked, I was like, well, there are some special effects in this movie, and that looked really gnarly. So I'm not going to give it a 1 like you did.
I'm a savage. You better wow me if you want these numbers. Like I said, we don't give awards for art.
We don't give awards for art. Yeah. So then the gore element, this is not a gory movie.
No.
That's not what it aims to do. If your thing is gore, and that's sort of like, it's kind of the idea with these scorecards is like, maybe you haven't seen the movie and try not to spoil it for you.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that people look for, especially in horror movies, I think. Some people do, like, they want to watch horror because it's really gory and it's slashery and it's violent, right?
Yeah.
And some people like it if it's just like a really great, like, cerebral story. In other words, these things don't add up to like this movie is good or this movie's bad. They're just preferences in terms of like things that you might like.
Yeah, and I think back to what you were saying earlier about like, I don't know why people consider this one so great. It's like, again, like we talk about how horror comedy is getting to be such a thing, right? People who don't really like horror.
Uh-huh. I guess it has more of a mainstream appeal.
Yeah, it's more mainstream because it's just not like every scene is blood and guts and, a kill and this and that. There's an eeriness, there's a creepiness. It's got the shock value moment, but it's quick.
Mm-hmm.
And you move on, right? It's still watchable as a scary movie.
In fact, now that I'm like sort of thinking about it, the body is in it's not the attic, the treehouse or whatever that she sleeps in, Charlie's treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of gory. Like the decapitated body, and they don't they exhume the body of the grandma, and she's up there.
Yeah, again. See, this is the thing. It's like I feel like it just.
But it's not bloody gore. It's like it's dead body gore. Scare factor. I gotta tell you, I gave it a 1. Also, this movie I don't think is scary.
Yeah, it's not scary. It's more like eerie. Maybe?
Definitely eerie. And
Eerie's
there's the moment with Peter when he's in the classroom.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, that's probably the best scary scene in the movie where I don't even know what the demon's doing to him, but like it's like stroking out his face.
Yeah.
He's raising his hand all weird and his head's all like bent.
But again, like you said, that's typical possession behavior.
Yeah. But the way that they show it is really cool.
It is really good. In Ari style, it's great.
It's great. When he looks in the reflection of him in the window or something in the classroom, it's not really his face. It's like a creepy, like smiling face. Like, I got you.
Yeah.
You know? For me, that was sort of it in terms of.
Yeah. There's not, again, I can't pinpoint points in this one where I was like, catching my breath and like, I've watched movies where I've had to look away. Like I've watched movies where it's like, I will run up the stairs from the basement at night because now I'm so creeped out that might happen to me and it's not even logical. But this just doesn't give me any of that.
Yeah, does it get your heart racing at any point where like you're nervous or tense?
No.
Not even so that's interesting because you're really, really scared by ghosts and possession and seance and I would think that if you're scared by that would be scary, but you're saying no, it didn't work.
No.
Yeah.
Didn't do it for me.
Story-wise, I'm giving this a 2 out of 4. I think what's cool about it is it doesn't just sit in the, okay, it's a demon, right? It they do have a whole story that goes into this that gets revealed about the grandmother and the cult and this demon came in and this whole backstory. There's there's definitely depth to it.
Right. It's also just, to me, again, like, these are the things when I say, like, when I'm looking back on the movie, like, I watched it, I remember that day, I was like, oh, you know what, this was a decent watch. But then if the days go on and I can't really remember these parts, like, that's how I know, like, the story didn't grab me.
Yeah.
It just didn't do it for me. I do think visually, I love the way that it was shot. I think the cinematography, again, is really great. But story-wise, like, I'm not like, oh my God, remember that scene in, and there's only the one scene that I'm going to do that. And that's where the decapitation happens. But you start talking about all these other things and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that scene now because I'm like, all right, yeah, it happened. It was probably great in the moment, but it didn't stick with me.
Didn't resonate. So, I mean, the last part of this scorecard I thought was interesting to include would be rewatchability, right? Because when I think about, I don't tend to rewatch movies often, but when I do, they do tend to be horror movies because, let's face it, there comes a time of the year, spooky season.
Yeah.
Where
spooky season.
you just watch, well, we watch horror movies, and inevitably there's just like a Rolodex of films that
certain months
it just comes up where you're like, I just want to watch that again.
The Strangers.
The Strangers, yeah, Scream.
That's my favorite.
There's a whole bunch, right? So I rated this one between 1 and 4. I gave it a 2. I have watched it 3 times at this point.
That's what I mean. So I've watched it 3 times, and it's just to get through it.
Yeah.
So it's a 1 for me.
It's a 1 for you. You don't ever want to watch it again.
I don't care to watch it again. It was great to watch it through once. If you haven't watched it, watch it.
Yeah.
It's worth watching. But it's not high on my list of like, oh, I want to watch something I've seen. Let me throw this on. Not happening.
So let's talk about his second movie then, Midsommar.
Yes.
It comes out just the following year, 2019. So, I mean, he gets into A24 and he's a hit and they go, make another one right away.
Give me something else.
So A24, probably one of the only production companies right now making original films, which is kind of sad.
And not just original, but like they're nailing it.
I mean, these films are awesome. We like almost all of them all the time.
I mean,
and whenever they have a new one, we're like, let's check it out.
Wait, wasn't Skinamarink A24?
I thought it's a Shudder original.
Skinamarink?
Shudder picked it up as a Shudder. I remember because we signed back up to Shudder to watch Skinamarink, and we made
That's for another day.
We made it about 20 minutes into that movie, and I said, this is some bullshit. I said, this is not a movie.
I have a lot to say about that movie, but I think it needs its own episode.
I hate this too because I hate shitting on people that take this on, because taking on a film project, I've said to you, it's the ultimate team sport when it comes to art.
100%.
It is extremely difficult to make a movie. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of people, a lot of coordination, a lot of time, a lot of dedication, a lot of effort. I'm sure that whoever made that movie, they did all those things, right? They put work into it.
Where?
I don't know. I don't know. And that's why I sort of left it, when we shut it off in the middle of it going, I mean, what the hell? Like, how frustrating. Like, how could you have watched that back as a filmmaker and just been like, I'm confident that my audience is going to be able to hold up through this.
I can't believe we're talking about this right now, because now you're going to make me go into a whole tangent.
All right, let's stop. Then I don't. It's just you're the one that brought up Skinamarink.
I'm bringing up just one point because I'm thinking we're going to talk about that on another pod because it deserves a conversation. It deserves a conversation for how we were duped. I'm not trying to watch it again. I just want to talk about it because there's nothing to. That's worse than Hereditary. In terms of rewatch.
It's the worst movie I've ever seen.
It's honestly the worst movie. It's the worst horror movie I have ever seen. I will die on that sword.
And me too. And it's one of those things where I'm sure there are people out there that love it, and that's fine. Again.
But I think that this
stuff is subjective.
The people
but I think that you're pretending to like it for the sake of like, you just didn't get it, man.
Well, that's exactly it. The people who like Skinamarink are the ones who are like, nah, man, you don't know underground music. You don't. I like underground stuff. I don't listen to this mainstream. Those are the people who like Skinamarink. You're the person like that's telling other people that they don't know real art, real music. And the reality is you just watched cameras pointed on a corner for 10 minutes at a time and tried to tell me that there was a story here. There was nothing. Okay? No. There's no way you could deduct anything that people have analyzed in that film. We watched it and we had to turn it off.
It's just not a film at its core. I always make this argument. The aim is to entertain. right?
Yeah.
Your goal is you're in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
Which means that somebody worked hard all week and they sat down and they go, out of all the things I could watch, I've chosen to watch your film or your show or your whatever. That is, as an artist, very difficult to get somebody to say, all right, I'm going to take time out of my day and watch your thing. So you have a responsibility when you make something and you put it in front of somebody to go, I'm trying to make you have a good time watching this movie. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, say something about life that you could maybe take from it and go, I relate to this in some way. It felt like none of those things were put into consideration.
But if you read about it, people have this whole world that happened in that film. Mm-hmm. Impossible.
Yeah.
It's actually like, no.
I didn't read.
You're making it up. That's why we have to just talk about it on an episode. Anyway, let's talk about a movie I actually like. Let's talk about a
good movie, Midsommar. Ari Aster's second film. Cast Florence Pugh as Danny.
This is one of her first real big roles, right?
I believe so. I haven't researched that, but I believe so. And she's God,
very young.
She knocked it out of the park. She's very young in this one. She goes on to follow this up with films like Don't Worry, Darling. She's also in Oppenheimer. She plays Yelena Belova in Black Widow. She's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe now. She's got a very bright future ahead of us. Ahead of her.
Ahead of us. Mark's married her in his mind.
No, not my type. But a brilliant actress. And obviously, she is one of my likes in this film. I think that
she's incredible.
Wilhelm Blomgren plays Pele, which that's another character that I really like in this movie, which we'll talk about him. William Jackson Harper as Josh from The Good Place. Love that guy.
Love The Good Place.
Good Place is a phenomenal show. If you've never seen it, well, I don't know about phenomenal, but it's a great, fun, entertaining watch.
It's different. It's unique.
And Will Poulter is also in this. He plays Mark. He is from We're the Millers. Maybe one of his first films. It's the first time I've ever seen him.
He's definitely been in a lot of other. He was like a very supporting actor type.
But I feel like he was young in that movie too. It's like one of his first films.
Oh yeah. He was playing a son, like a teenage son.
Also, he landed the role of Adam Warlock in Guardians. I can't believe not.
The glow up is real.
My God, yeah, he's all jacked now.
Yeah. Well, anyone who becomes a superhero from Marvel is like, well,
you kind of have to.
You're going right to Thor status. Here we go.
So obviously love the cast. It's a great cast, and he nails the setup. The setup of his films, just like he nails it again, and it's so unsettling to watch this all play out because Danny, obviously, she's having this sort of crisis with her sister specifically, right? She's got these mental health issues. She's been threatening to harm herself. Now she's threatening to harm her family, notably their parents.
Yep.
And Danny's freaking out about this. And this ultimately ends up being the catalyst for Danny going on this retreat to Sweden with her boyfriend and his friends.
This particular movie is driven so much with foreshadowing and symbolism, right?
Yeah, a lot of symbols.
Literally, there's a scene at the start of this that tells you the entire series of events. Mm-hmm. There's a panning of the, if you will, the Midsommar historical drawings, right?
You're talking about when they get to it?
Yeah, when they actually get there. It's all laid out for you. Yeah. So I even think like every interaction in this movie matters.
Yeah.
Every decision that they make leads to something with their fate. Mm-hmm. Everything about their personalities matters in the grand scheme of the story. And that's why watching this the second time, I loved it even more because I already know what's going on and happening, but now I can watch it back and look for those pieces.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I love how it has like this sort of classic horror dynamic with the young cast that gets offed one by one.
It's a slasher.
But it's not, but yeah, there's
convince me otherwise.
There's because you don't have like one masked murderer guy going all around. It's a whole cult, or as you said, it's supposed to be a community, but I view it as a cult.
But is it multiple people carrying the killings, or is it not?
Well, yeah, I think
you don't really know who kills everybody.
Well, because they're all meant to be sacrificial lambs,
correct.
Right?
There's a certain number of sacrifices that have to be made for the event, and that's why everyone has to bring somebody.
Yeah, so Pele brings them all. So after Danny's sister does what she threatens to do, And Danny is sort of left really homeless in a way, right? It's like
that's her whole family.
Her family is gone.
She knows Christian doesn't want to be with her.
Right. Her relationship with Christian is not very strong. So she's very much feeling desperate and lonely. And she's really in need of something like this Swedish retreat, right? To sort of, she's just trying to find a place in the world.
Find herself. Find a community.
Yeah. And Pele kind of sees this, I think, from the outside and kind of knows that, oh, you know what? She would fit right in.
She would be the May Queen.
She would be the May Queen, right? And what do you think of the May Queen whole ritual thing they do? It's all about just dancing until there's nobody left standing.
That's not all that it is. So again, it goes back.
That is sort of how they determine it, right?
Well, yes, that is, but it's rooted in pagan rituals where the devil is playing this music and you're dancing until you die in that way. Like the devil has a hold of you and controls you till the end. And the last one standing wins. Any type of like religious acts like this that are very rooted to the seasons, it's witchcraft.
So when they talk about, Pele talks about the seasons and they sort of view their, I imagine this is based in some sort of a real cultural thing that goes on. It's
loosely based.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how they view their life, right? They view it in terms of the seasons where you have the spring that's when you're young and virile and
cyclical
spry.
Nature.
And then you have the summertime. But that's sort of, I guess, when you cross over the threshold into like now you're an adult, you're a young adult, and you're sort of like, summer
you are full of life. Let's say that, full of life. Right? Like
you're in your prime.
The sun, like summer is like where we all come out of our shells and we're living life to the fullest, right? And then fall is like where you start to slow down, right? It's still, a point where like you're living and you're out and about, but like things are coming more into like a steady nature, and then winter comes, right? And we all hate fucking winter.
And winter comes for two of the people at this retreat.
A lot more.
Well, no. I'm saying when they do the ritual of the two people that, what is it, when they turn 72?
72. So that's what I think is also so interesting about this is like, they really have this like very defined nature of the family that it's like, this is a celebration of those people's lives, essentially. Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels very cold.
But again, like, I think this is the watching back part. Cause like, this is where some of the things that I think are so intriguing about how they did this. So when these two people are 72, your life ends. You're giving your life to the rituals and to the sacrifice of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that's going to like open the next chapter for the next like people.
Well, and the reason being too is interesting. It's because they're choosing to end their life at a point in which their body is not sick and decayed yet. Right? So they're saying like, listen, we understand what life expectancy is for people. And we've chosen this specific age as like, this is the last time that you're really...
Yeah, you got to do everything up till this point.
Right.
So you better live your life until you're 72.
Because it's all done. Downhill after.
It's all shit. It's all shit. I would argue nowadays it's happening earlier, but 72 feels all right.
I don't know, man, because like... I think life is, it's what you make it, right?
Is.
You can give up when you're 28 or you can give up when you're 72. It doesn't, it's sort of on you.
But that's what this whole thing is about, like, or this community is what they want you to believe it's about. It's that they have figured out the cyclical design of life to enjoy it, right? So everything is celebratory. Everything is about respect. Mm-hmm. Everything is about a hierarchy almost, right? They wait for the eldest to start eating before they eat, and it goes down the line like dominoes.
Which is really cool and really creepy, too.
But all of those aspects of this are what get me is like, there is a level of beauty in the community that they have built. Yeah. There is a level of love and respect and care for each other. Mm-hmm. There is an openness.
There's a beauty to it, sure.
Of course.
A lot of psychedelics going on, right?
A lot of freedom, right? Mm-hmm. Freedom of sexual freedom. There's, like we said, like freedom of thought in a lot of ways, because you don't just do psychedelics because you want people to fall in line. Psychedelics are making you think about life and your decisions and your life path differently. And it's this understanding of like having a community that's there for you who lives, breathes and thinks like you do, and you feel a part of something. And that's what draws Danny in. These are Americans looking at a culture, that they're looking at as like, this is ancient culture. This is, something that not many people get to experience.
And they're also not respecting it either. Danny does give it a certain level of respect.
Yes.
I think a lot of that
she doesn't cross the lines.
Well, yes. And a lot of that does come from, I think, where Danny is at, the type of person that she is. Whereas Christian and his friends are taking it way less seriously. They think it's kind of goofy and foolish, especially Mark. He gets his freaking face peeled off and turned into a mask.
He's the skinned fool. They play the game right before his death. They play a game called the Skinned Fool or something. Skin the Fool.
I don't remember. Yeah, I just remember him peeing on the log.
Yes. After they play the Skin the Fool game.
Yeah.
And then he ends up with the mask. And then towards the end, when you see him in the wheelbarrow, he's the jester.
We have to talk about the scene where the two old people go through their ritual. And it's like they climb this gigantic mountain. Everybody's at the bottom looking up, waiting.
Yep.
There's a big giant stone at the bottom, and they're kind of flattened out. Like it's like that's the target.
It's set up for this event.
When the first woman jumps and she smashes her head direct, like it's high up too,
face down. You're just belly flopping onto the rocks. It's like if Rafiki just body slammed Simba from that.
Oh my
Pride
God.
Rock.
Yeah, it's higher than Pride Rock. I feel it's up there. My God. And Connie and her boyfriend's reaction is just like, and they're like, we're getting the hell out of here. Like any normal people would do.
But that's the first one. You still have the second one who jumps.
Yeah.
So the woman, she jumps and she does exactly how it is meant to go, right?
Land on your head. Again, Ari Aster with the head.
Smashed.
They have to smash the skull for some reason. Correct. It has to be smashed.
So he jumps.
And he misses.
And this is, again, one of the aspects of the scenes
brutal
that gives you that creep factor. And we haven't even mentioned this yet, but the entire soundtracking of this movie is so horrifying in the tension build of the music, the way they sing, the things that they do. And in this scene, because he did not die, they all have to act out and feel his pain out loud.
Oh my God.
And they're all screaming and until someone smashes his mallet and he's dead, and then they go silent.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
It's horrifying.
It's horrifying, but it's back to everything we said about the community. This is the moment where I think you really realize, like, oh, this is some cult shit.
Oh my God. It's the darkest version of it that you can imagine, especially in like this beautiful environment, right? Like the juxtaposition of what's going on in
Calmness
this community
of nature in that moment
versus where they are, the serenity and peacefulness of this.
The time of year, everything's blooming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's but that scene is whew.
And this is why, like, I don't understand why so many people were disappointed with Midsommar as a follow-up to Hereditary, because I'm like, geez, I could point to so many things in Midsommar that feel so original and fresh that I've not seen before that really creep me out. Again, this is something that can really happen. You and I always talk about, like, what's the scariest stuff? It's not the monster under the bed or the ghost that you can't see, because let's face it, that's not going to happen to you in this lifetime. So you don't think about it as a real rational fear. But, I mean, there are crazy cults and cannibalistic people that, like, they'll do shit like this if they get a hold of you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the scorecard then. For acting, what did you give this one?
On this one, I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 3 as well. And again, I think that it has, obviously, you know, we went over the cast. There's very strong actors in this, but overall, it almost feels like Florence Pugh just sort of runs away with it and steals the show, and everybody else is sort of left holding the bag.
Yes.
Effects-wise, I gave it a 2. Again, because it's not a very effects-heavy movie.
Agreed. That was my thing with that. I gave it the 2 as well. There's not, which I like.
And honestly,
a lot of it's very practical.
I don't like the mask face, Mark's face as a mask. It looks too clean. It looks rubbery.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like when they do like Leatherface, for example, like that's what a human skin mask should look like. Like even like the way that the eyes are cut out is like, it almost looks like it's machined. Like I'm like, there's no.
Yeah.
And so in other words, I think when I saw that, I was like, it's not. It's creepy, the idea, but it doesn't look that good.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, like we said, for the most part, it was a lot of practical makeup and,
Which is great. I love.
Same. That's always great. I think the bear piece of it was pretty cool and interesting in the way that they do that. So, yeah.
Gore, I gave this a 3 because simply from that one scene when, the old guy, when he misses the rock and they come and they one by one bash his head in with that giant mallet over and over. And they're taking turns. Like,
oh, yeah.
It's just a bloody, pulpy, and I'm like, ugh. Like, it's gory. It's gross to me.
I only gave it a 2 on Gore because, again, I think that this isn't a horror movie in the realm of, like, how bad the kills were. I think it's the psychological aspect of it all and, the way that people can be manipulated and, brought into something if you can convince someone enough, they'll be like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, that's the scare.
So scare factor then, right? Let's talk about scare factor because I gave it a 2. Like you just said, I think it's more about like the psychological tension and like my heart races at points in this movie, but it's not because like I'm scared of what might happen. It's like, it's almost like holy crap, like what the heck? Yeah.
I get that like complete tense fear in this. The music, the way that they have to feel things that people feel for them. That happens more than once in this.
Scary, yeah.
It happens also when they set him on fire and everything, like, and they're all like screaming outside. To me, this stuff is the most horrifying. I literally remember sitting there and going, "There's people who live like this."
I mean, who's to say what the right way is? I think we grow up in American culture, this being what we know and this being how to live as far as we're concerned. But I think we all just sort of lose sight to the fact that like we made all this stuff up.
Everything is made up.
Regardless of what political party you affiliate yourself with, what country, what religion, identity, like you have to understand you were born randomly into this world on a patch.
Not if you believe in astrology.
On a patch of dirt, okay, somewhere on the planet.
Yeah, and
then that randomness has dictated how you live your life, the things you believe in, the kinds of people that you associate. It's all just you're a product of these environments that were made well before you.
Yep.
And it's really your responsibility to sort of seek out any other sort of alternative form of reality or lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like, how we'll judge a community like this because obviously, like, they're partaking in murderous like things that are really dark.
I'm not skinning nobody.
But to them, it's beautiful.
To them, it's
people voluntarily going into a building that they're alive, knowing that I'm going to go in there and they're going to light this thing on fire.
Yeah,
and I'm going to burn alive.
Yeah, there's 2 people who are like, yes, thank you for picking me, thank you.
Here, take this. You won't feel anything, right? He gives them a little spoonful of something.
Yeah,
and then the guy gets lit on fire and he's feeling all of it. He's screaming bloody murder. Like, why couldn't you just give the guy something so he couldn't feel? Like, he's volunteering his life for this. The least you could have done. Instead, you lie to him.
Gotta suffer.
Oh, my goodness.
Gotta suffer for the demons.
What'd you give it for story?
Demons. Story, I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 3 as well.
I think like there's some crazy things that you would never guess in here. I think the symbolism is amazing. I think the way that they, foreshadow things for you and you almost don't even you don't realize it. You don't realize that it's literally telling you the story in advance of what you're about to see. And I think it's just done so well. And I think when you really start to dig into the connections to everything and the way that this is cyclical to mental health, right? Like it starts where there's a murder-suicide and essentially the end is a murder-suicide. It's Danny letting go of everything in the past while also simultaneously choosing to kill her boyfriend.
The story is, it's very original. It's just wild.
It's wild. I think it's beautifully done. Again, I think you look at Hereditary.
Ending is very satisfying.
Yes.
I think.
I mean,
Which has a lot to do with
myself,
whether or not a story is good or not. Is like,
yes.
Like this is one of the things I learned when writing a story, writing a screenplay, is the importance of outlining it and like creating like character backstories in terms of like, who are they and how do they interact in this scene? And once you outline it and you can understand, I have an act 1, an act 2, and act 3, your story structure when you go to write that script is sound because you understand up front like how everything leads to something else.
Yep.
I think there's so many stories out there that maybe skip these steps and they don't know where they start writing something because they have an idea and they don't necessarily know where they're going with it. How many times do you watch a movie and then you go, it was good, but then the ending just sucked?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people sacrifice it for time. Like Ari Aster's movies are long.
They're long.
All of these movies are long.
They're long.
Like, don't sit down and think like it's like, oh, I'll be done in an hour. Nope. But I think it's important because he's doing really complex stories.
So that leads us to like rewatchability. Obviously, there are long movies.
To 4. It's not even a question.
This is like you'll watch this every year.
It doesn't get old to me, and every time I see and observe something new, and I love that about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm so captivated by the story.
Yeah.
Because this stuff does weird me out. So
I have a 3 for rewatchability. I think it's very rewatchable.
Mm-hmm. That's good for you.
Yeah. Let's go with his latest now, Beau is Afraid. This one is, I think, available for rent right now. I don't think you have to pay for it, obviously.
Yeah, it's still pretty new.
If you want to watch it, it's very new. But this one stars the great and powerful Joaquin Phoenix as Beau Wasserman. Obviously, you know Joaquin Phoenix, Walk the Line, Joker, Gladiator. Basically, it's telling you everything you need to know in the title. Because this movie is about Beau and all of his fears, which stem directly from his
childhood dramas,
from a very abusive, narcissistic mother. And maybe you can talk more about this because I was fortunate. Well, I was fortunate enough to grow up with a great mom. I have a great relationship with her. I can't relate to this movie in that way.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I can't because, my God, does it seem like a nightmare.
It is. I mean, I think what's funny is it's hard. It's hard to talk about this stuff. Mm-hmm. But, growing up as a kid, you don't necessarily realize that it's weird. You don't necessarily realize that there's something off or wrong. But when you grow older and you start to see these patterns and you get smarter, like, yeah, now I know.
Well, see, you did, but Beau doesn't.
Well, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Is that I'm lucky where I recognized it at some point, right? And I've been able to then stop myself even and start to recognize characteristics or things that I do as a result of what happened when I was younger. And in this case, like, no, he just lives his life the way that she built it, basically.
Which
for him.
It is a comedy of errors. And then
everything is as awful as it could possibly be, and then taking it 5 steps further. Whatever you think is awful, this is going to be worse. This
is his funniest movie, Ari Aster.
Funny with quotes.
Well, because like I said, he always has like funny dark humor and stuff, but he cranks it to 11 in this
It's movie. Also like the personality that Beau has.
Oh yeah.
And like the way that Joaquin creates this character is like he's somewhat endearing.
Very much so. I think
you feel bad for him.
I think that's why a lot of people like Joaquin, and obviously why he was a great choice for the Joker, right? Is he does have that underdog mentality about him, right? He's not this strappingly handsome guy, especially in this movie.
He's a pretty good-looking man, but yeah.
You think so?
I don't think he's terrible. I think there's other actors that people think are
obviously in Joker he's trim and he's in shape, but in this movie he's way more schlubby and doughy.
Well, it's not even about. I'm not talking about body even. I'm talking about face.
Well, no, I'm saying when I'm talking about like when he's like the underdog that you feel bad for. Like they're putting him in that physical.
Of course,
space,
he's older and he's
in
this. Yeah. But listen, there's a plug for every socket, all right? So.
Well, and in this case, his plug is non-existent, right? Because his mother has basically instilled the fear of God in him.
This is wild.
When it comes to sexuality, right? He is afraid to have sex. Not only is he afraid to have sex, he will not jerk off, relieve himself in any way.
Yep.
To the point where like there's a scene where we see his swollen testicles when he's getting into the bathtub. And my God, like it's comical how big they are. Like,
it's like when the douchebags have on their trucks the hanging balls and how big they are.
It's three times the size of that.
It is awful. A lot of phallic things in this film. But yeah, it's wild. He thinks he will die if he ejaculates, which is
yeah, his mom has convinced him
the craziest thing.
Well, it all tracks back to his father's death, right?
Yeah, she told him that his father died.
Yeah.
After they had sex, and then she was pregnant with him.
Right.
From that experience.
So he believes he's guilty and he's responsible for killing his father.
Which is what attaches him to his mother and feels like he's all she has, and she makes him feel that way. This is what narcissists do. They put their problems on you, like you created their problems, and make you feel like you have to cater to them. Mm-hmm. Like it's a woe is me thing.
Yeah.
And she is the queen of woe is me.
And the mom is split into two roles, which I didn't even pick up on. You did.
Yeah.
Zoe Lister-Jones plays the young Mona Wasserman. And Patti LuPone plays the old version of Mona Wasserman. She's from American Horror Story. And so we'll start with the good and the things that I liked about it. And number one being the cast. The cast is phenomenal. Yeah. Amy Ryan is in this. She's from The Office.
Yep.
She plays Grace. She is married to Roger, played by Nathan Lane.
Another huge.
I love Nathan Lane.
Yep.
He's phenomenal. Also, he is really funny in this movie.
Yep.
Parker Posey is in this as Beau's childhood friend Elaine Bray,
love interest.
Which
childhood love interest?
How old is Parker Posey? Is she in her 50s?
Is she?
She looks hot as hell in this movie. How does she look like that at her age?
That's your quintessential.
She looks amazing.
Woman.
There is a sex scene at the end with her, and what are they listening to while they're having sex?
What? I don't remember.
Seriously? They're listening to Mariah Carey.
Oh my God, that's right. We watched it so long ago.
There is a Mariah reference in this.
Always Be My Baby.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre. Of all the songs, was so bizarre.
Well, no, it makes sense because the mom.
I do not want to ever have sex to always be my baby.
Yeah, but think about it. The mom, you'll always be my
baby. I know, 100%. Again, it's
the
worst scenario. So this is the first time Beau is having sex.
Yeah.
He's getting over this fear. He's actually making a decision for himself.
Which he thinks will kill him. He
does think it will kill him because I think he's at his end of his rope at this point. So I
think it's just because Parker Posey gets naked and he's like, well, I can't turn.
That's not why. I think at that point he's already kind of resolved that like his mother is dead. He didn't show up. He's a failure. He's embarrassed her and everything. So I might as well go out like this. And she is a rubberized sex doll. It's like she's supposed to be dead, but
she goes into immediate rigor mortis.
Like just sitting like.
So like what is Ari Aster getting at
to
here?
Always Be My Baby.
Like he had so much in him, right? It backed up. This is what?
I don't even know if it's that. I feel like again, it's like. If it's not him, what's the next best worst thing, right?
I think that's the joke. I think it's just a joke. Like you think that Beau is going to die. Beau thinks that he's going to die. It's going through, you got the Mariah Carey song on. Like Parker Posey's doing an amazing job with her enthusiasm and he's all stiff and tense. Like the whole way that the scene plays out is one big joke. Because at the end he flips it and goes, no, he has so much in him that her body can't even handle how much, and it's toxic and kills her.
No, see, that's wild. That's what your brain went.
Joke.
I don't. I think it's in his mind. The worst thing that could have happened was that he dies, but that doesn't happen. And the actual worst thing is that now he has a dead girl on his penis. And that's even more horrifying than if he had died.
But it's not as funny. I think he's going for funny here.
I don't think he's going for funny.
I do.
I think everything is meant to be a worst case scenario you could never think of.
Well, yeah, because one of the things I have written down here is what period the period.
How many times we said that in this movie?
We said what the fuck, I think 1,000 times watching this movie.
in many different forms.
There's no real way I can really convey or describe this movie. It's just, it has
You
to
have
be.
to watch it.
It has to be consumed. It is all things suspenseful, horrifying, funny, just the most bizarre nightmare you could possibly imagine. You know what? The closest movie I think I can liken it to, maybe in terms of like the chaotic nature of how everything is orchestrated in Beau's life and the journey, because he kind of goes on like this journey, through his fears, right, and through his, you know, the chaos of the relationship that he has with his mother.
His mother did everything for him, right? And she ingrained all of this stuff, control, and every decision she made for him was tied to like, well, we have to do this, otherwise this will happen, which creates all these irrational fears. And as a grown man, he is now incapable of making decisions for himself because he thinks of every horrible thing that could happen if he chooses one way or the other.
Yeah, and he's crippled by that.
Yes. And like,
well, I guess that in a way is like, that's anxiety and paranoia, right?
Yes.
In a nutshell, is like,
which is what you get from narcissistic parents. You get this anxiousness.
So it's like, would you say that like you'll feel that where it's like
100%.
You'll have like a point in time where it's like, I have to make a decision and I'm just crippled by it. Like,
yeah, quite often. Mm-hmm. Because again, you think about all the bad things. You're like, well, if I do it this way, this could happen, this could happen. But if I do it this way, then this could happen, this could happen. And then you freeze. It's the tension piece.
It's unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like you always try to figure out where it's going. Like the whole purpose of this movie is to always subvert your expectation. When you think he's going to do this, it's a zigzag move the other way.
Else, yeah.
And that's where you get those what the fuck moments. Like, where is this going? Who is this person now? Wait, why is he all of a sudden?
Is that real? Is that in his head?
Why is he all of a sudden in a forest? Like, who are these forest people? Why are they doing improv in the forest? Like, why do some of them seem to know who he is? Like, oh, it's been so long, Beau. Like, then there's like this part where it goes into like an animated stop motion thing. And you're like, wait, now we're in it's a totally different movie now. Like, what happened? How did we get here?
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about this. Like, I love the originality that he packs into this thing. It's like no other movie really that I've ever seen.
No, I can't compare it to anything I've ever seen.
It's
Nothing.
awesome. But I feel like a lot of mainstream audiences may struggle with this one because it's 3 hours long and it's all that. And then coupled with that is like, there's some really off-putting moments in here where it's like, it's disturbing things to watch. Like a girl drinking paint.
Oh,
right?
God.
Like, and it's like, you don't realize like how disturbing, like she's chugging it.
Chugging. Like literally the whole, like, oh.
So I could see like in the course of a 3-hour film, if you're struggling to understand what's going on, which you will be struggling to understand what's going on, and then he's forcing you to watch things like that, I could see why you might just tap out.
Yeah, don't watch this under the influence of any substances or I don't think you need it.
Well, actually, it might enhance.
I don't know. I think it's too much. I think it might be
because like one of the bad parts about this movie is it probably is maybe a little too cryptic, a little too weird at times. There's a little lacking of clarity in terms of like what's real and what's not. Again, I don't know that I would necessarily call that bad because I personally like that.
Same.
But I think that these are things that you can chalk up as being bad if you are somebody who wants to have an anchor in a world, right? If you're watching something and goes, I need some sort of an anchor to understand like what is actually happening to Beau and what is just a manifestation of Beau's fears.
Yeah.
Then I think you're probably watching the movie for the wrong reasons and you're just going to miss out on all the cool shit.
I mean, I think as somebody who is anxious and thinks of all the worst case scenarios on a regular basis, I like it for exactly what it was, is an insight into someone's mind and every worst case scenario they could think of.
Yeah.
Like, we all have this. We all have this in some way. Some people obviously tap into it a lot more. I'm sure I tap into it a lot more than you do. But to me, that is what makes it good. It's like, you can't anticipate what's going to happen next because you can't live in someone else's brain.
And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, and speaking of you can't predict what happens next, there is a scene in this movie when Beau finally does return home to
oh my gosh,
confront his mother.
You want to see your father?
She reveals his father to him is a gigantic penis monster that lives in their attic.
But again, his worst fear, like, if he's thinking about who his dad is and has never met him, his worst fear is that he's a giant penis monster in the attic. That's his worst fear. This is how ridiculous it is. But
well, he's afraid of his own dick and balls, so I guess, I mean, it makes sense. But it's just, who would have thought in a million years I would see? First of all,
never.
Who are the people that had to work on that monster, the penis monster? Like, Ari Aster's going into a room saying, like, I need a giant penis monster. And they're going, well, what are you talking about? Like, this is what you want to show at the end of your movie?
It looked really good, though.
Yeah, that's good. So let's move on to the scorecard. Acting, I gave a 4. I mean, this was across the board. The cast is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you can't even argue again.
Bill Hader has a cameo in this movie.
Which is so funny.
Randomly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just cool. Like, I don't want to spoil that scene.
And there's so much to talk about. We can't even talk about it.
Specifically is just so, like, it's funny, but it's also brutal. Like, it's so much of it. But yeah, Bill Hader is in this randomly. It's just, the acting is awesome. You also gave a 4 for acting.
Yes.
We were tops there. Mm-hmm. Effect-wise, that beautiful animation sequence that they put in this
from
movie.
The woods. There's not a lot of horror movie effects, but it took a lot to make this movie for sure. A lot,
yeah. And there's like all sorts of really cool transitions that are
crazy mosaic in the mother's house, all the people's faces.
It's definitely a 3. It's up there. Gore-wise, I gave it a 2. Again, not a gory movie other than the crazy naked man that stabs people.
The crazy naked man, and then the daughter drinking the paint, her face after. Mm-hmm. Like when she's like, what did you do? Oh, yeah. Like, that was crazy gray.
Scare factor, I gave it a 1. It's not particularly scary.
No, same. It's definitely more, again, it's like a lot. If you're an anxious person, if you're a person who thinks of worst case scenarios all the time,
I think ultimately we've landed on Ari Aster's films for us or not. We don't watch them to be scared.
No, I watch them because they're just good movies. Yeah. They're unique. It's going to be something that I, haven't seen or could predict. He really nails the visuals and nails the casting.
Story, I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 2.5.
Wow, he couldn't bump it to the 3.
No, this was just a Dolores thing to do.
Okay.
I think, again, because like...
It's just the lack of clarity.
Like, I don't love the ending.
The kangaroo court when he's in the boat.
And it just... Yeah. Like, the ending to me... I wanted the ending to end in a reality. And it doesn't. It ends, like, in a fantasy world. Obviously, none of that is real. Like...
There's some alternate ending to us reading about that involves Michelle Obama.
Which is worse. I would keep the ending we had then. Yeah. But it makes it feel like most of the movie is in his head. Most of the story is in his head because it ends on that. And it's not real. But like, again, that's the beauty of this movie. Like, you really can't discern what is real and what is he imagining. Like, it's hard to make those distinctions.
Right.
So 2.5 for me.
And then
I wish I knew a little more about that. What was real, what was not.
Rewatchability, I gave this a 4 because obviously I just think there's infinite stuff to pick up on, especially once you go through it once and you sort of pass the what the fuck moments. Going into it again, I'm excited to watch this, even though it's a 3-hour long movie. But yeah. I don't know. A lot of people online, when I was reading a response to this movie, were saying you feel every bit of the 3 hours. I personally didn't. I thought that this movie changes course and has enough dynamic shifts to just keep it moving. Fun to talk about these Ari Aster films. One of my favorite horror directors for sure. We'll try to probably do a couple more episodes like this where we just sort of hone in on a specific filmmaker. I think is a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
We thank you so much for watching and being back with us. The goal is to do these a lot more frequently now and keep the ball rolling on the show and get more guests on the show. I have a new album out now for my band Break Past Reason. Album is called Artificial. If you want to check that out, you can. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, everything, Amazon.
Anywhere you get your tunes.
What else? Anything else? The Patreon.
I was about to say, we got to do one last plug. If you made it to the end of this podcast, just a reminder, we are on all major streaming platforms for podcasts. We are also on YouTube and Instagram at Me Dark Presents. That's MEE Dark Presents. And our Patreon, where we're going to have some bonus content and material. We are not expecting anyone to pay, but if you want to contribute to this, we would love to eventually do this as a full-time thing.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is being done independently. I'm producing this whole thing by myself. I don't have a producer.
He's making movies by himself. Yeah. He's making albums. He's making podcasts. What else are we doing?
Movies, podcasts, music. That's what I do. So
Dark presents all the media.
Yeah, any kind of support that you could throw our way is much appreciated. We need to support people in the arts because right now, nothing really original.
Art's under attack.
Nothing original is really being made. I mean, obviously you have people on strike, which directly affects my business. Yes. A lot of people I know are struggling for work right now. So it's rough out there. Yeah. But again, thank you so much for watching. See you on the next one.
And remember, we don't give awards for art.
I almost forgot that part.